My name's Starsky and welcome to From the Studio on Clubbing TV. In this episode I'm going to be taking a look at a modern synth that's based on the foundations of some of the most revered vintage synths of all time, and it's one that has become in itself a modern classic. It's the Sequential OB6. This is the brainchild of two of the most respected names in the synth community. Dave Smith, who created the late 1970s and early 1980s hugely successful synths like the Prophet 5 and the Pro 1, and Tom Oberheim, who made the classics like the SCM, OBX and the Matrix 1000. For almost 2 decades now, Dave Smith has been pumping out classic after classic synth with the Mofo, the Tetra, the Prophet 8, the Tempest drum machine, the Prophet 12, the Pro 2, the Prophet 6, the Rev 2, the Prophet X, the Pro 3, and I'm a big fan of sequential synths and I've owned quite a few of them, but this for me is one of the more interesting releases, purely because it brings the Oberheim sound to a modern synth without all the complications of owning a vintage machine with all the hassle that brings. The Oberheims are renowned for being difficult and expensive to maintain and fix. They suffer from things like drifting oscillators, so they can go out of tune while you're playing them, and there's always the constant worry that something's not going to work. So what exactly is this? Well, it's a 4-octave synth, 1, 2, 3, 4 octaves, so not 5 octaves like the more vintage synths. It's got 6 voices and it's got 2 oscillators per voice with a sub. It's got a single LFO, a polymod section, an arpeggiator and sequencer section. It's got SCM style filter. I'll go into what that is in a bit. Plus it's got some effects and room for 1,000 presets. The design harks back to the 80s with the blue lines like an old Oberheim, and you've got this single LED rather than an LCD screen, so just 3 numbers is all you get, which is a little bit difficult to work with at times. Be nicer if it was a full LED, but it's a really sort of nice, compact but fully featured synth. It's a really nice bit of kit, this. But what does it sound like? Probably the most famous Oberheim sound is recreated on presets on every Oberheim type of soft synth and every Oberheim sort of synth that's ever been released, and every demo you see of them seems to play it. So I'm going to go through some of the presets, have a little play around with it, and I'm going to try and avoid playing Van Halen's Jump at all costs. So let's see what there is in here. What have I done? Feels so dirty. That's disgusting, that is. It's like temptation just took hold of me, and oh, I do apologise. So let's start off by taking a look at the oscillators. We press manual and right to get the initial tone. That's just oscillator 1 on a sawtooth. So you've got oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and a sub and some noise, all mixed through this mixer section. Oscillator 1 and 2 are quite similar. Oscillator 1's got a sawtooth and a pulse, and oscillator 2's got a triangle, a sawtooth, and a pulse. And you can blend from one waveform to the next. Oscillator 1's got this oscillator sync button, which does this. Take that off, you get this. So it keeps oscillator 1 in tune with oscillator 2. Get all sorts of lovely sort of ripping sort of leads with that. Oscillator 2's got a low frequency mode. You can hear it just click in there. And that means that you can use it as an LFO. So we go up to the modulation section, the cross modulation section, and let's use oscillator 2 as a modulation source for oscillator 1. So we'll adjust the pitch of oscillator 1 using oscillator 2 in low frequency mode. So we go cross mod section, VCO 1, frequency, turn the VCO 2 up. So that's oscillator 2 modulating oscillator 1. And that's what makes the cross mod section so good. It's only got 6 destinations: VCO 1, shape, pulse width of 1, changing the filter from bandpass to normal, and then filter frequency, so just like twisting this, and the filter mode, which is just like twisting this knob here. But patch number 7 had some really nice cross modulations. I brought that in, so let's try that again. Let's just see what I did with that. So I think it was around here. So let's move over to the filter then, and as I said earlier, the filter is an SEM style filter, which means it's state variable, which means it can change from being a low pass through to a notch to a high pass, and you can blend between those different modes there, and it's also got a band pass mode. And just quickly, just to show you what each of those are, a low pass means low frequencies pass through and highs are cut out, which is what we're used to hearing. We've got a high pass, so all the low frequencies disappear. And then we've also got this thing called a notch, which just takes out the mid frequencies. So put it onto notch, and then move the cutoff frequency. That's sort of nice phasing effect, and you can hear that you've still got the low lows in there and the high highs. So if I did something like this, for example, then moved it towards a notch, you'll bring in some of the high frequencies that'll stay in. And most synths don't have an SCM style filter, don't blend between the different modes, and that's what makes this special. Of course there are others that do it, but it's unusual. And quite often the vintage sound people lust after is due to those hundreds of components all degrading over time and everything's just a little bit out. Makes it sound big and rich and full, and that's what this detune knob here does. It just puts a little bit of sort of random variation in the tunings. Sound terribly out of tune. So let's take a look at the Arpeggiator and Sequencer section now. And as you saw earlier, as I was going through the presets, they've all got a pre-programmed sequence in them. Let's hear what 14 sounds like. So let's try a really obvious, sort of famous arpeggiator. And the clock can be synced to the LFO and it can be synced to the effect. So you can get lots of things bouncing around. So let's put an LFO onto that, syncing it with the clock. all very nice. You could put a delay on that as well. So again, really good, really handy, really easy to use, massively hands-on because pretty much everything is available straight from the front panel. But there is one hidden function here, and that's a distortion. Tom Oberheim apparently didn't want to have a distortion knob on his synth because the old synths never had it, but the Prophet 6 does, the Dave Smith Prophet 6, and this has got it. If you just hold A and B, you see distortion comes up and you can add some distortion into it. Add a bit more. So again, another flavour, another texture, some more colour in the tone. So I think that gives us a nice overview of what it can do and the sounds it can create. You know, it's a really nice looking unit. It's a nice sort of, it's small, you know, some people might prefer to have the 5-octave keyboards. I think I'd prefer to have the 5-octave keyboard, to be honest. For one, you can't really play Van Halen's Jump on just 4 octaves. Sorry to bring that up again. Anyway, it's a really nice compact unit. It's got nice knobby interface. It's a really, I don't know, it's a really attractive looking thing and it sounds fantastic. But is it for you? Well, for me, this was a no-brainer. It was a yay all the way. There are other options if you want that Oberheim sound, mainly from soft synths. I've recently uploaded a comparison of a few of them to my Starsky Carr YouTube channel that you might want to check out. Arturia and Synapse Audio have recently released their Oberheim emulations in the last couple of months. And then there's the OPX, that's been out for a few years now. And there's also the OBXD, which has just been updated, and that's available for free, although a donation of $50 is recommended so they can continue to develop it. But to be absolutely honest, as far as producing a track goes, I doubt anyone could tell if it was a vintage one, if it was this, or if it was a soft synth in the final mix. So this is definitely a luxury synth, and I definitely don't need it, but it's going nowhere. I love it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, you can catch it anytime on our From the Studio playlist on the Clubbing TV official YouTube channel. And if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll see what I can do to answer them. So, I'll see you in the next episode of From the Studio.